Consumer electronics is littered with format wars. We had Betamax versus VHS. We had HD DVD versus Blu-ray. But how many of you remember DVD versus Digital Video Express or DIVX? Let's get into the story of that.
Stories. We would be honored if you would join us.
For great advice about digital technology, head for Circuit City. If you're looking for a DVD player, make sure you choose one with DIVX. Only DVD players with DIVX play both DVD and DIVX movie discs. DIVX lets you watch movies at home for about what it costs to rent, but you never have to return movies or pay late fees. This RCA DVD player with DIVX is only $349.99, and get any 5 DIVX movies free after rebate. Plug into DIVX at Circuit City.
For us in the UK now, I think probably for most people worldwide as well, DIVX has a very different meaning in 2025 when I'm recording this to when it first came to prominence, really, all the way back in the later 1990s. In fact, I'd suggest many people in the UK, I'm in the UK, wouldn't really have heard of it at all. But there was a period of time where the DIVX disc was a challenger to DVD. There's some argument about whether it complemented DVD, sat side by side, but it was a point where it was putting confusion into the marketplace by having two digital video disc-ish products at the same time. So let's wind this back. VHS, dominant format for watching films at home throughout the 80s and most of the 90s. Betamax was always said to be technically the better. As such, Betamax lost. That's the rules. VHS then, it was coming to a point where we were buying CDs more than we were cassette tapes, and the move towards a digital film format. Well, there was Laserdisc, and Laserdisc was the connoisseur. The film fan with deep pockets could have a Laserdisc player, basically. They weren't cheap, but they were a step above, several steps above the quality you got from a VHS tape. However, something like CD, but for movies, was inevitable. And I mean, the origins of DIVX go back to an American electronics chain called Circuit City. Now, Circuit City never made it to the UK, but there was a point in America where they were commonplace. It's like going to Curry's here in the UK, something like that. And also, alongside this, if we go to the early, late 90s, the emergence of a DVD disc format, digital versatile disc, was causing headaches for the movie industry, because for years there had been this absolutely regimented way you got your films out into the market. If you made a blockbuster film, there was this model. So, let's take an example, Terminator 2. Now, Terminator 2 in the UK, we got it slightly later than the US. I think it was August 1991. It came out as cinemas in the UK. Then, if you wanted to watch it again outside of a cinema, you had to wait for the video rental. The video rental didn't turn up until February 1992. So what's that, 6-7 months after the cinema release? Then, if you wanted to buy the film to own, you either bought an ex-rental tape, this is memory lane, isn't it? Or you had to wait for the sell-through video, smaller box, which came, I think it was October of 1992. So there was this pattern, really, that lasted 15 months between a film being in cinemas and you being able to walk into a shop and buy a brand new copy for yourself at a reasonable price. For the studios, 3 bites of the cherry. It was often said, certainly for smaller films, that the cinema release was the trailer for the much more profitable video release. And there was kind of a status quo here. Which cliche shall I go for? A boat they didn't necessarily want rocking. There was the occasional film, Disney was good at this, or massive blockbusters, or certainly around Christmas, where it was just, it skipped rental, went straight onto video to buy. We even had those in the UK, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, Three Men and a Little Lady, Batman Returns did, I mean, I could go on. But the DVD format that was coming through was a very potent threat to cinema release, rental release, sell-through release. And all of a sudden, there were meetings taking place. As much as DVD went on to become huge, there was so much uncertainty over what would happen in the mid-90s. And I mean, it turned home entertainment upside down, but nobody really knew that was going to happen. So DVD launched in Japan at the end of 1996, rolled out into the US in March of 1997, hit the UK properly in March of 98, although lots of us were buying imported players at that point. And to help push DVD, early studios who adopted it, and this is relevant to the DivX story, such as Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers was a huge advocate of DVD. Started making their big titles as day and date releases. As such, that meant that once a film had run in cinemas, like Contact, for instance, the DVD would go straight on sale. No rental window at all. You pay it slightly, what, $25, was it? Something like that. You took the film home. And so you didn't have to wait for this rental window. Lethal Weapon 4 didn't have to wait for the rental window. Every film that Warner Brothers was putting out, no longer was there a rental window. Oh, well, some studios weren't happy with the idea of that. And so it was in 1995 that Circuit City, and so this is still a year ahead of DVD properly launching, 2 years of it launching in the US. Circuit City entered into an agreement, I'm not making this up, with a law firm called Zifrin, Brittingham, Branca and Fisher, because history is littered with popular consumer electronics products that have been generated in part by a law firm. And the idea was looking at a rental-centric digital disc, a variant of DVD that would protect the rental model. And so at heart, I mean, I suppose the easiest way to explain it is a pay-per-view DVD disc. It would be the same size as a DVD, but different. And there was a story that suggested that Digital Video Express, as it was known, DivX, was originally began as an idea for an encryption standard for DVD, as opposed to the rival format that it would ultimately become. Because Circuit City had, it had the stores. I mean, internet shopping, not a big thing in 1995, folks. So you walked into a store if you wanted to buy something. Imagine that madness. So it had the stores. It could launch a format and get it across America. So that side of it, yeah, okay. You've still got to make a consumer want to go into the store to want to buy the technology, but, let's cross that bridge shortly. So what the technology required was, first of all, a telephone line. Now, this was radical, really. As much as cable television required a cable, the world wasn't yet at the point where it was dialing up to the World Wide Web from home via a modem that hogged your telephone line and made funny noises, pre-broadband, halcyon days. And so you had to connect this player to a telephone line. Well, people didn't like the idea of that. Was it going to hog the telephone line? Was it always going to be snooping on you? It's amazing the stuff we got upset about in the 90s that just implicitly came true, and now nobody cares. They should care perhaps, but nobody cares. So it required this line. And then the idea was that, say, DVDs were selling for $25, $30 in the US. How about a digital disc that sold for $4 to $5? You put the disc into, not a DVD player, but a DivX player, look the same, but that notwithstanding, press your play button, and then you've got 48 hours to finish watching from the point you press play. Exactly the model that digital rentals use now. You press play, the clock's ticking. Then, usually on the DivX disc, I think this was one of its many fatal errors, there were no extra features. But also, after 48 hours, the disc locked. Then, as a consumer, you had two choices, really. You could put it in the bin. Again, we're in the 2020s when some awareness about the planet burning is a lot more commonplace. This was a format which was disposable, really, as much as stores would put in recycling bins and stuff like that. Part of the promotion was, when you're done with it, just chuck it. It's fine. Unless you wanted to keep the film. In which case, if you wanted to watch it again, in fact, you had three options, really. You could dial into the mothership via your player and extend the rental, pay a little bit more. You had to set up an account in order to do this. That didn't go down well either. Again, commonplace now. Or you could, inverted commas, silver the disc. Assuming the studio would let you do it, the studios would have control over the pricing. You could pay a fee to make the disc silvered. I'm not sure silver is a verb, but we're sort of going with that now. What this meant is you could watch it for all time. So say you bought George of the Jungle, which was available on DivX. George of the Jungle is a film I really, really love. But you paid $4.50 for the initial disc. And then if you want to watch it forever, as you should, another $20, $25, the disc is silvered. You could watch your George of the Jungle DivX for all time. in theory. There is a twist to that bit of the tale coming along. But the idea was that it looked to a consumer cheaper than a DVD. Also, to the studios, well, it protected that kind of model that they'd had: cinema, rental, sell-through. Okay. Now, you couldn't put a DivX disc in a DVD player, so you're going to have to explain that to consumers, why that silver disc didn't work in that thing there. I mean, you could use a CD in a DVD player, so cross-compatibility was a thing. However, there was also the option, if you wanted, that you could buy a DivX gold disc. Now, again, not every studio made these available. Not every studio allowed you to, I hate using it as a verb, silver your disc. I mean, it's just wrong, isn't it? 90% of titles you could silver. I've got to move on from that. A gold disc was, as it sounds, if you want to buy the film outright, you buy the gold version, that's it. You can watch George of the Jungle forever, from day one. So that was your options, really. And as much as, I mean, so much explaining to get to that point. Now imagine explaining that to a consumer when it's side by side with the DVD format, which is buy that player, put that disc in, press play. No setting up an account, no phone line involved. No, do you want to extend the rental or anything like that? Once you've got the disc in your hand, that is it. Now, over time, DVD, there's the issue of disc rot and stuff like that, which I'm sure I'll come to at some other point. The announcement formally that this was going to happen, that DivX was going to launch, was going to go into Circuit City stores and a couple of other chains, I think 2 or 3 chains picked it up, came in September 1997. And folks, let me tell you, it went down like a fart in a car. All those little niggles that I just told you about, the pushback was quite something. So the World Wide Web was building up here. And it's important to note this was happening in tandem, that AOL free trial discs were everywhere in 1997. And more of us were being able to dial up via a creaky modem to the World Wide Web and read a lot of consumer journalism, fan sites, publications that have been made by enthusiasts that were putting the professional stuff to shame. And on a lot of, I mean, there was an ecosystem of DVD sites in those early days as well. DVD File, the Digital Bits is still going, terrific site. The Big Picture DVD and Home Theatre Forum. I mean, these were influential. The voices on them were influential. And most of the people editing and writing those sites did not like DivX at all. I mean, what was this madness? Is it going to hog your phone line? Not really, but you still had to dial in at least twice a month. You had to register this account. In so many ways, the technology was ahead of where we are now. But, I mean, people just weren't having it. So there was a piece on the website, E-Town, in September 1997, which I dug out, and it outlined these details that you've got Matsushita, Zenith, Thompson making players. They cover quite a lot of brand names as well. Also, we learned that Digital Video Express had originally been called Zoom. It's no longer called Zoom. Wonder what we use Zoom for now. Now it was DivX, DIVX, all capital letters, as opposed to the container file we know, which is D, little I, little V, little big X, blah, blah, blah. So, as Etan noted at this point, there were people in the corner of the format. So Disney was there from day one. Now, Disney would actually take more time than most studios to wrap its head around the DVD format. Those of us who were there at the infancy of DVD, when Disney decided to go for it properly, its first wave of releases were hugely expensive and really poor, as opposed to now, when it really goes for it, really goes for it. But Disney was committed, and as E-Town reported, it wasn't just Disney. It said already Disney, Paramount, Universal and DreamWorks have signed on for DivX. And to a degree, why wouldn't they at that point? DVD was, I can't iterate this enough, DVD was no certainty. It was, nobody knew how quickly it was going to blast off, and this protected the rental side of it. So they've committed, E-Town said, to day and date releases with their VHS counterparts and to supply 1,000 catalogue discs. Anyone launching a games console or any console will know in the end, eventually you've got to sell people the inverted commas software. The 1,000 catalogue titles was really, really important. Studios, as E-Town also noted, also liked the fact that the copy protection was deemed to be very, very tight on DivX. There are a couple of concerns about DVD. So this E-Town article gave a kind of state of a nation from a slightly DivX-leaning way in the autumn of 1997. And it predicted this. Gazing into our dusty crystal ball, we see a 2-level DVD industry. And it said the $25 sell-through and DivX rental titles. Just as there are rental-only VHS tapes that cost $100, that was the price that rental stores had to pay for the tapes, and others for $15, DVD will head in that direction. Well, it didn't. One thing we can guarantee, wrote E-Town, wasn't the most prescient article that site ever wrote. Enthusiasts will go ballistic about new DivX technology that makes their current players obsolete next year. Well, it did go ballistic, but not in a good way, really. And so it said, we make a suggestion to manufacturers, how about offering trade-ins and stuff like that? So there were some sensible ideas in there, but there was a feeling that DivX was going to take off. And it's worth noting that as much as there was pushback from the groundswell of upcoming enthusiast websites, there was still this kind of, there was so much big money behind it, so many big companies, much like AI at the moment, this ongoing assumption that AI is going to soar, whereas there are lots of us at the end of it go, is it? Anyway, that notwithstanding, the pushback kept coming and kept coming and kept coming. And in terms of the power of these groundswell of sites, this was the Ain't It Cool News era, where Hollywood was also really nervous of the power of an internet it didn't understand. The early days of Ain't It Cool News, never a site I particularly liked, and there's some stories behind the science. I won't go there at the minute. But it was deemed to have a lot of influence over the commercial performance of films like Speed 2 and Batman and Robin, for instance, in 1997. And studios were scared of it. And all of a sudden, the people behind DivX were seeing all of this pushback against its new movie disc format. And I mean, they didn't have the control that they used to have. Also, the messaging was getting difficult because now it became clear that DivX hardware players required more technology within them, and so were going to cost consumers $100 more. So what Circuit City was now having to sell to a consumer was a more expensive player to buy much cheaper discs, but also discs that you would throw away at the end of it. So if they were going on a strictly selling it on a kind of strictly this is cheaper kind of way, the hardware needed to at least be the same price as a DVD player. It couldn't attract a premium because those inclined for DVD will go, no, we need DivX. Because why would they? I mean, the format they want is cheap. There was all sorts of little muddles as well. And also cross-compatibility thing. You couldn't play a DivX disc on a DVD player, although DVDs would work on certain DivX players. And again, it needed to be simple messaging, and it wasn't. We go to the start of 1998, though, and this was the point where battle was going to commence. So DVD had been in the American marketplace for, about 9 months at this stage. And so at the start of each year, the Consumer Electronics Show takes place in Los Angeles. Big tech companies go there, show all the massive tellies, the technology they want us to buy over the next year or two. And there was some unease about DivX, but nonetheless, they went and they exhibited there at a point where DVD was garnering all the headlines. And I mean, the headlines coming out of it weren't great. But also in February 1998, so just a few weeks later, the Digital Video Express team probably had their best day because that was the stage where they were able to convince 20th Century Fox to add its name to the list of studios supporting the format. So if you look at who was involved, you had DreamWorks, you had Universal, 20th Century Fox in there, Paramount in there. You didn't have Sony, you didn't have Warner Brothers, but it was fracturing. But still, there were so many big titles that were going to potentially be on DivX, not just George of the Jungle, that this now felt like it had a little bit of a shot because not all of these studios had committed to DVD. Fox would be quite late to DVD, for instance. The problem was that as much as the DivX team were pushing the idea that this could be a complementary format to DVD, that they could exist side by side, it was being seen as a rival. Because again, you go into a shop, there's one player that plays one kind of discs, there's another player that plays another kind of discs. Unless they're all working in the same player, you've got a bit of a problem there. And so this is why it was crucial, the rush to sign up as many movie studios to support each format. Because in the end, it was going to sell off the films. Terminator 2 in 1992, when people went to the rental store, they knew they had to have a VHS player because they wanted to watch Terminator 2 at home. So kind of similar-ish idea working there. So, I mean, I dug back through a lot of the websites. Archive.org is a terrific site for going back into vintage websites. They do wonderful work. And there's a lot of old articles that you can find there that have been deleted from websites that are no longer with us. And you go back to, say, the digital bits, which is still going 20, 30 years on. There's actually an article on there from March 1997 where the editor of that site, Bill Hunt, was very open about the fact that he wasn't a fan of DivX, but DivX demoed the player for him and demoed the software. And he wrote a really constructive article, which is still available on his site. And it confirmed that prior to first use, you call DivX and give them your credit card number for billing purposes. Again, that was a big hurdle for people. And then the article, the article that Bill Hunt wrote criticised the video quality of the demo disc provided, but reconciled, they just demo discs. Some early DVD demo discs were a problem. What was interesting, though, was that all DivX movies, he wrote, will feature pan and scan only with English 5.1 surround sound as determined by the studios. So now when we buy a film on Blu-ray 4K, buy a download, it's widescreen. It's anamorphic widescreen. Pan and scan, and there'll be some people listening to this who don't know what it is when basically the film has to be re-edited to hit a 4:3 aspect ratio, the size of televisions. Really, through to the mid-90s, most of us had a 4:3 television as opposed to a widescreen one. Now you can't buy a 4:3 television, not that I can see. I haven't tried, and it's all widescreen. But for cinephiles, widescreen was key. So 20th Century Fox enjoyed a huge success in the early 1990s when it started releasing films on widescreen videos. So you get black bars on the screen on a 4:3 screen, but you saw all of the picture. And one of my favourite my favourite travesties of pan and scan, if you like, is if you go to Alien 3, not the film that many people love, but still, you go to Alien 3, there's a scene in that where the alien goes right up to the side of Sigourney Weaver's head, out comes the thing from its head, and blah, 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 and it's all in one shot. On the video version, they have to pan across it, and you lose the impact of it being a single shot. So straight away, that was saying, if all of your films are going to be available on pan and scan, and virtually everything on DVD, although not all is going to be widescreen, you're losing the film fans. So who are you really going for there? Well, you're kind of going for the casual film rental fan. DivX discs also weren't going to have all these extra features that were going on DVDs, but does someone who just wants to watch a movie on a Friday night and not need like tons of IMDb trivia, do they care about that? Do they want all the extra features? Well, this was the argument. And there was this case, and I think there was something to it, that most film fans were just happy with a basic rental. However, DivX still had these problems. It hit the market second. It was more expensive. You had to give your credit card number. You had to hook your machine up to the phone. No matter how much a studio liked to format, in the end, it couldn't force it on consumers. Were you able to force a format on consumers, the Sega Dreamcast would rightly be regarded as the finest games console of all time, and would have sold tons. However, that ain't how the world worked. So casual film fans were being asked to pay more for the hardware. And also, when they went, the idea too of the DivX format was you wouldn't go to a massive consumer electronics shop to get your discs. You wanted to go to your local corner shop, your local newsagent, your local chemist, just a shop around the corner where you could buy a selection of these $4 or $5 discs, but they weren't stocking them. And so you go to the Bill Hunt article, and in there is kind of like almost like an email inbox where you get alerts of stores in your local area that have started carrying DivX discs, but not that many of those alerts went out. Because what they couldn't persuade, certainly in any quantity, small independent stores just to have a rack of these discs. They'd have video rentals in those stores or a few videos to buy, but they weren't taking DivX discs. Also, Circuit City's rivals, there's no way they were going to carry the format either. Why would you want to benefit Circuit City if you're one of its competitors? So you couldn't go to another massive consumer electronics chain that was in direct competition and pick up either a player or disc. It was going to take a journey and a half just to get the discs back into your home. This was a problem. All of this then, and then the format officially launches. We haven't even got there yet, right? The format officially launches in June 1998, but it was running late. There were a couple of teething problems. And in the end, it launched a week after the announced date as well. But DVD was now, 15 months in and selling well in the US as well. DVD would explode, I would suggest, with the Matrix DVD, which came in 1999. That really gave it an extra leap. But it was still selling well in 1998. A Computer Retail Week report in June 1998, however, was just summing up the issues that DivX was having at the point it was launching. And it wrote, since its announcement last year, DivX has stirred a storm of controversy among retailers and DVD manufacturers. Computer Retail Retail Week noted that nearly all US retailers have refused to sell the products because the technology's marketer, Digital Video Express, is backed by a rival. And so one or two had signed on, but most hadn't. There was unhappiness too that this format was going to confuse the market and potentially might hurt DVD. But still, DivX, $100 million was allocated to the promotion of it. Yet it was falling short fairly quick. There was a promise of there are going to be 75 films for launch day, but there was 25, if that. And it wasn't a wide rollout in the end in June of 1998. That wouldn't follow until September 1998, when lots more players got out into the market. And it was, you've got to win the Christmas market. You've got to get your footprint in the upcoming Christmas sales. Otherwise, you're in trouble. Well, initially, sales were sluggish and down to single figures in certain stores, went one or two reports. Impossible to test the accuracy of those reports 30 years on. But they did get a stroke of luck because demand for DVD was rising, but supply wasn't matching it. And so a shortage of DVD players in time for the Christmas market led to a rise in sales of DivX. Now, it's fair to assume DivX sales would have gone up anyway, but coming the other side of Christmas, around 500,000 DivX discs have been sold. 87-ish players described as DivX enhanced DVD players have been sold as well, 87,000 of those. And it wasn't a terrible result. I mean, in terms of market share, it's heading, about 20%-ish, something like that. Circuit City, though, in the background it was losing money on this. And heaven knows what happened to that law firm as well. It had been actively looking for other investors and partners in the autumn of 98, but no joy. It couldn't persuade Blockbuster Video to stop the discs either. That was another blow too. But around this time as well, there was an attempt to re-seize the initiative. And this was really quite something. So noting the success of all of those DVD websites I was talking about before, suddenly, out of nowhere, a sprinkling of websites came up that were pro the DivX format. So there was one called Absolute DivX, which described itself as dispelling rumours. Another called DivX Myths, a fair assessment it billed itself as. DivXit was one. Great. DivX Country. But the one that I tracked down is called prodivx.com. And again, you can find it on archive.org. And I'm looking at its website here. And it says, where the facts are told and the decision is yours. And it's quite something. I mean, it reads, and I suspect this is what it was, of someone in a corporate office trying to do a fan site. And so the opening page of this apparently written in a spare room Pro DivX site is, Happy New Year's, everyone. It says this is a post on 26th of January 1999. So just after that Christmas. 1998 has been an incredible year for DivX. I've done some research in the past few days and have come across the DivX sales figures. Check out these numbers, presented almost PowerPoint style, with a list of bullet points and certain numbers highlighted in red. It looks like DivX has done it, says ProDivX. What an incredible national launch, and then backed up with a phenomenal Christmas season. There are a lot of people out there enjoying their DivX players. I am loving my Pro Scan. There's a sentence I've not read out before. And then, you believe it or not, this week I'm going to be updating the site with new trivia, getting rid of those coming soon pages. And then how's this for a sign-off? Have you ever read a fan site that ended with this? I wish everyone a great start to the new year and enjoy those $4.49 movies. Well, these were called out really quickly. And journalists did some research on this and tried to contact the editors of, let's just say, 2 or 3 of these pro DivX sites that suddenly appeared. I mean, they're like bot social media accounts, really. They never got responses to those queries. One of the sites just fairly quickly disappeared, actually. And the truth was, as they headed into the Consumer Electronics Show 1999, the writing was on the wall. That studios they just weren't making the money out of DivX, whereas Warner Brothers was just making a fortune for backing DVD. And if there's something that turns the head of big national conglomerates and huge corporations, it's cash. Over the months, Paramount went to DVD, Fox went to DVD, Disney went to, everybody went to DVD because that's where the money was. And the mechanism by which people were buying and watching movies at home was changing fast. Also, the profits from DVD were smashing to smithereens the profits from VHS as well. And right through to, I think it was 2005, 2006 was the peak of DVD sales, that it said that the reason you got so many interesting indie films and risky films from studios as well in the late 90s and early 2000s was they knew they lost money in cinemas. They would coin it in on DVD. And so in the end, the collapse of the DVD market has cost us a lot of really interesting films. That notwithstanding, the story here is DivX. And on June the 16th, 1999, the format had limped on for a few more months, but Circuit City decided to cut its losses. The studios had gone. Sales were falling, losses were mounting, and Circuit City in the end had to absorb a $300 million loss, a bit more than that actually, on the whole format. It couldn't go it alone. It didn't have the partners in the end. And in the end, consumers spoke. They didn't want a rental service that kept connecting to a mothership to see how long you had left. Yeah, I mean, I'll just leave that there, how times change. The icing on the cake for those who had gone for the DivX format, who had bought their George of the Jungle or Eddie Murphy in Holy Man or the Talking Parrot film from DreamWorks, Paulie. At the point it was discontinued, the clock was ticking. And within 2 years of Circuit City discontinuing DivX players, well, by the summer of 99, players weren't on sale. Discs were being destroyed as well. Everything ripped off sale. Get this. If you had bought a DivX, and oh God, I'm going to use the verb again, and silvered the DivX disc, on June the 30th, 2001, it stopped working forever. Let's consider this. You spent, $400 on a player. You spent $30 on the film. Your player, because the server it needed to connect to verify your account was no longer active, would not play, your dedicated DivX player would not play any DivX disc at all. If you had bought the thing to buy and you hadn't claimed your refund by June of 2001, not only did you have no way of playing your copy of George of the Jungle, you couldn't get a refund on it either. Incredible, really. Other format wars, I mean, when VHS beat Betamax, you could still play your Betamax tapes, you just couldn't. But I've got a garage with HD DVD discs in it. I backed the wrong horse there. There's a wonder why consumers don't like format wars, why manufacturers don't like format wars. I just consider the whole irony of the DivX format, and the name DivX was taken for other purposes, for video container files and stuff like that. So there's a whole other use for it now. But that whole thing of you buy it and then you can't use your disc. The lessons that were learned from it, it got to a point where it was listed as one of the 25 worst consumer electronics products of all time. But the irony isn't lost on me that the kind of model that it was trying to promote is exactly the kind of model that studios have managed to bring in, courtesy of the video on demand era. The more things change, folks, the more in their own little way they stay the same.